The definition of engagement that I like to work with is that where employees feel there's a sense of purpose at their work and they are putting in a discretionary effort. So what I mean by that is if I've been told to do ABC, an employee does ABC and then looks at doing D because they see that's the next logical thing they should be working on to drive the company's mission forward. An engaged employee will do that. A disengaged employee will stop at C and go home.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Everyone I talk to would love to have a fully engaged employment culture. And today we're going to talk about increasing employee engagement. We have a special guest on the show. He is the founder of Engagedly. It's Srikant Chellappa. Hopefully I got the pronunciation of that right. But Sri and I have a really incredible conversation about engagement and really, how do you increase employee engagement across your company? What is engagement? Why it's so important to you? And there's some interesting insights he shares with us about the data, the background of his company. So if you are interested in increasing employee engagement, got a little tongue-tied there, but I look forward to you absorbing this content and really getting the most out of it. We do talk about his leadership, growth at a personal level, and how that impacts his own company. So make sure you tune in to all of this. If there is something that we're doing that you feel like we could support you with, right? Whether it be developing your managers to be more like leaders, or to increase your own executives to really perform at that higher level, then make sure you reach out to me, gene@genehammett.com. And it is, that's my email. The website is genehammett.com, and just go to schedule your call and you will be able to schedule a call with me. We'll talk about your business. I spent over 10 years helping people understand what's getting in the way of their leadership, their culture, and their growth. And if you feel like I can unlock some of that for you, I'm happy to do it. It's no cost. All you have to do is take action. Go to genehammett.com and schedule your call today. Now, here's the interview with Sri. Sri, how are you?
I'm good. It's been a good day so far. It's Monday. Happy Monday.
Great. I'm excited to talk to you about your business and about the leadership practices that you're seeing inside your company, but also you've got a unique perspective because of the service you offer, Engagedly. Before we go too far, tell us about Engagedly.
So Engagedly is what I call a people strategy platform for organizations to align people and their purpose to organizational goals. So it does that through three areas of focus, which is around building a strong performance culture through different tools, a strong employee development and growth culture through focusing on career growth, employee development, learning, coaching, mentoring, things of this nature. And third, actively engaging their people and building a strong engagement culture within the organization so that employees feel connected and have a sense of purpose with working for the organization. So those three things come together to really deliver the promise on aligning people to the business strategy.
Why did you choose this area of business? Because you probably could have chosen a lot of different areas, but you chose to work in this employee alignment and purpose and goals.
I spent my first 9 odd years in business consulting with the Big Four. I noticed a lot of disengagement typically I worked with a lot of Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 type companies in that case, and a lot of disengagement there and many of the clients. But then I did 9 more years in healthcare consulting in technology side of healthcare. And obviously in healthcare, we work with a lot of large organizations as well. And one thing I noticed, the common theme, whether it was healthcare or financial services or transportation or any other industry out there, is that there is a general trend that at that time I was seeing where there was a lot of disengagement within the organization, where people felt like they were being passed over for promotion because they were not schmoozing up to their boss or boss's boss, or there were people who basically came in, just punched the clock and left work. People were being treated like numbers on a spreadsheet. So a lot of these issues on both sides, from people as well as from organizations. And then when my friend, a business partner of mine from a previous business, suggested about building a platform that would drive better engagement, I really latched onto it because I really felt it gave me purpose, because I felt the same working in different companies and working in different projects for different companies, that I was just basically pissing my life away sometimes, some days, in sitting in these long meetings where nothing was getting accomplished, for example, and people were just there to earn a paycheck. And I really felt like we need to change that as a species. We need to change that.
Let's back up for a second here and just get your take or definition of engagement in the workforce.
So the definition of engagement that I like to work with is that where employees feel there's a sense of purpose at their work and they are putting in a discretionary effort. So what I mean by that is if I've been told to do ABC, an employee does ABC and then looks at doing D because they see that's the next logical thing they should be working on to drive the company's mission forward. An engaged employee will do that. A disengaged employee will stop at C and go home.
I like the very specific definition behind this. I think a lot of people listening in here would love for their employees to do more than the bare minimum, more than their job requirements say, because we're looking to create strong teams and collaboration with others. What do you think is getting in the way of engagement in the workplace?
There's the biggest barrier to engagement, I believe, if you were to rank order it, it'll be a manager. People generally will work in a place where they may not necessarily feel aligned to the work. They may feel, okay, I'm just earning a paycheck, but they'll still feel engaged if they have a good manager, somebody who they feel deeply cares about them and their own well-being. So that obviously matters. So I think when you have a bad manager, and the manager himself or herself may also be disengaged because they may have a bad manager on top of that, right? So it could be from any of those directions. That's the biggest driver for, I believe, disengagement. The second biggest driver is when people feel like they're just earning a paycheck and they don't feel connected to what the work they're doing, and they just feel like they're not getting treated fairly at workplace, or it's not what they want to do. They're just doing it because they have bills to pay. So I think that's when, I would say those are the two biggest ones where people feel disengaged.
Now, Sri just said managers are the biggest barrier to employee engagement. And I completely agree with this. If you have a good manager, you're going to feel like you're connected to the work because you feel like someone understands you, someone appreciates you. But if you have a terrible manager and that relationship doesn't have trust and that they don't communicate effectively, you're going to suffer performance drastically. And so my question to you is, how do you measure a manager's ability to create that level of trust and understanding? Well, you do it in one-on-one calls with them or one-on-one meetings, and you also do it through really connecting with the people around them, talking to the people that report to them, talking to their peers, and really get an insight for who they are, not just the work they create, but how they're creating the relationships and trust inside the organization. Those are just a little bit of my perspective around this. Is it easy work? Absolutely not. It takes time, takes patience, but it's so worth it. And you will be the exceptional leader when you get to this point. And you get a point to take it to the next level. Now back to Sri. I do want to talk about your team, and I spend a lot more time with you on the product and the services that you offer because it's just rarely do I get a chance to talk about to other people inside this workplace that probably study it as much as I do. I've done hundreds of interviews about leadership and culture and, that employee experience and engagement is certainly a big part of that. When you look at the data across, the hundreds of clients you have or thousands of clients, what are the things that you see that would give us some insight about, increasing the level of engagement with employees?
The one thing that we have seen a real shift in the last few years is really a more employee-focused approach. So the engagement issues that I was seeing 10 years ago, 7 years ago, 15 years ago were worse. I would say it's gotten better. That's the good news. It's gotten better because there's more awareness for employee well-being than there ever was across the world, not just in America, across the world. I see that in India. I see that in Europe. I see that in some of the clients we have in Africa as well. There's a strong sense of caring for employee well-being and a strong sense for providing transparency within the workplace. I think organizations were typically very tight-lipped about their strategy and their performance as an organization. I think companies are being more transparent about their performance and their strategy, which gives people actually a stake that they can have in the organization. So that's definitely something that is changing and driving better engagement. The second thing that I'm seeing in the last couple of years really is a focus on employee development, where employees are not necessarily forced to go and take a certification or take a training. They're giving the keys to say, hey, you can decide how you want to grow in your career as long as it fits within our parameters of what is useful for us. I mean, if you're a financial services company and you suddenly want to decide you want to be a filmmaker, that's probably not going to work. But if you want to work in, let's say, digital marketing and you want to make some animations, maybe there's some opportunity there where you can, be part of their marketing arm or something like that. And that level of psychological safety that's being provided to our employees by their management. I don't think was the extent of that wasn't there before. I think that's certainly changed, and that's, I think, driving a lot of engagement there. And the more organizations that do that, I think the more engaged they will find their people.
Now, is your product a SaaS platform that allows you to manage the data that comes back with people, maybe even survey people? And I'm sure there's probably some other elements I haven't described. But so tell us a little bit about Engagedly.
I think I lost you for a second there. So.
I was just kind of curious around the software that you use. I would imagine that it's organizing the data. It's probably doing surveys. There's probably some other elements. What are the core elements that you would define as Engagedly?
Yeah, the core elements of Engagedly is we talk about the 3 E's. That's the execution element, which is around performance management, performance appraisals, 360 assessments, even giving feedback, goal setting, OKRs. So those modules or tools are part of the execution part, because that's really driving organizational strategy execution. The second part is around enablement, which is enabling employees to do better in their career, which is really around employee learning and development. So we have learning management, employee mentoring, coaching tools that go with it, as well as real-time feedback for the employees. The third aspect is really driving better employee culture, which I call the engagement E. And that is really around recognition, rewarding employees, building challenges, praising employees when they do the right work, giving employees either financial or monetary or non-monetary rewards, and building a corporate and organizational culture around their values, really. So that's all part of the 3 E's. So those are different tools. So altogether, we've got about 10 odd different modules that fall into one of these 3 E's.
Now, Sri just talked about coaching managers, and I'm going to go ahead and be blunt with this. A lot of people think they understand coaching. They understand, maybe you ask more questions than you do statements, or you listen actively. Well, coaching has those things in it, but there's a lot more to it. And I find a lot of people think that coaching is closer to what they see on the sports field than it is in the business environment. And so what I would ask you to do is, if you want some real support on this, we're happy to give you some training around this. It's absolutely free. Just reach out to me, Gene@genehammett.com. I'm happy to give you this, or I can just give you some questions that will really provide some context to how your managers can coach each other. Now, if you really would like for us to support you and your company, then all you have to do is reach out to me at Gene@genehammett.com and go to schedule your call. Now back to Sri. I want to switch gears for us. We've been talking about increasing the level of engagement with our employees, but I want to ask you about your own leadership style. How would you define your leadership style within the company?
So, I actually been working on a book, which I tentatively titled An Ikigai Workplace. So that's really built on the concept that you want to put the right people in the right seats in the bus. So there is no point, and I think Einstein said this, where you can measure an ability of a fish by measuring its ability to climb the tree, because that's not what it's meant to do, right?
Yeah.
So I think, or some version of that. So that's the key here. And my leadership style is really trying to figure out who has what strengths. And sometimes the employees themselves may not know that, or may not acknowledge that, because they believe they want to do something else. Aspirationally, they want to do something else, but the strength sometimes lies somewhere else. And maybe they just don't want to do that because they've been doing that for 10 years and they're done with it in their life. And that's okay too. So that's an important aspect to know as a manager, as a leader. So my leadership style really comes down to putting the right people in the right seats based on a discussion with them on their strengths and aspirations that align with organizational goals. The second aspect is really empowering them by providing them a outcome focused goal that's rather than telling them how to do it, but more than what needs to be accomplished, and then letting the person figure out, working with me or whoever else in the management team, how they can get there, and then try to be helpful in removing obstacles along the way for them to get there, and be a coach in the process. So I think those are the two aspects I would say kind of define my leadership style.
You mentioned be a coach. You talked about it within the platform. I have no idea your background. I mean, I'm a certified coach. I got certified, even though I don't think you have to, but I know for me, I did because I was an engineer and I had a very logical, process driven brain, and works in many situations. But when I had to pick up the pieces in my own life and things were really hard, I had to access other ways of processing and other ways to deal with it. And it was very helpful for myself. It's been very helpful for my clients. Did you go the route of professionally certified coach, or what route did you take to really coach your people powerfully?
Yeah, I don't know if I would call myself a great coach, to be honest. I think the way I like to do it is to really give them space to fail within the parameters of risk not being fatal, risk of failure not being fatal. So I think my approach to coaching is really focused around giving them an outcome and then asking questions. So more of a, if you were to think of a therapist in a way, right? Not that I'm a therapist either, but asking questions, let them arrive at the answers, or at least give them enough hints that they arrive at the answers, and then discuss the possibilities from there on out. So it's a really a discussion process that lets them define what will get them there to that outcome. So instead of telling them what to do, because every time you tell them what to do, then that becomes expectation, because then they're waiting for the next time for you to tell them what to do, and then the next time for you to tell them what to do. I'm not necessarily a great teacher, so I don't necessarily teach. I point them to different resources. Sometimes it's online, sometimes there are other individuals in the organization, or different certifications or training they can take external to the organization. But those are more, I would call, guidance, more of a connector approach rather than a direct coaching approach.
Now, Sri just talked about the space to fail. Now, I was just having a conversation with a lot of my clients at this event that we do at the Porsche test track. And it was an amazing experience. Yes, we did drive around the track and go over 100 miles an hour, learning the aspects of how this car performs. And our performance driver coach pushed us. There was no space to fail in that experience, by the way. We wanted to be safe in the car first and foremost, but they did allow us to push the boundaries and really on the inside track, there was some skill building that allowed us a lot more freedom. When you're on the big track and you're racing around, you want to make sure you're in complete control of this. Now, inside your organization, you want to create places where people have the space to fail. How do you do that? Well, you give them boundaries, you give them support, and you allow them to run with it. Are they going to run with it the same way you would do it? No. Are they going to do the same exact decision? You're probably not. In some cases, they're going to try something different. They'll learn from it. But I ask you, that's how you learned, and that's how you are where you are. So why not give them that space? Does it take a little bit more time? I'm going to be honest with you and say yes, but also it creates more confidence and trust in themselves. So let's give them the space to fail and support them as they go through this, and even pick up the pieces and build a sense of resilience as they do. Of course, I'm not asking you to do anything catastrophic or, something that's going to close the doors in the business, but give people a chance to grow, and that's giving them space to fail. Back to Sri. I'm kind of curious. You've probably been through different challenges within your own, personal development, your own growth as a leader. Is there a challenge that you have overcome that you feel like helped you understand the way you see leadership today?
That's a good question. Never thought about that. Yes, I think this is not related to necessarily Engagely or my business. I don't know if you actually researched my background, but I'm also a filmmaker, and I have made a few films, and many of them have gone to, on different cable channels like Showtime and Netflix and Amazon Prime and places like that. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because my first film, I almost went under personally, financially. And I think I just put my head down and not try to focus on the distance of getting through the whole thing clean and secure, but focused on the next step and the next step and the next step, and just focusing on the next step I need to take, and just getting through the day and getting through tomorrow. And I think that approach, it really helps when there's adversity in life, where instead of trying to figure out, hey, I need to cross this ocean, just do one more row on the boat, right? And then do one more row. And then you can always take one more step, and that's true with I think in business, it's true if you are a long distance runner, for example, or if you're going on a tough physical adventure of some sort. And I think that has kind of defined how I approach things. Instead of trying to get overwhelmed by thinking about everything that I have to do, just think about what is the next logical thing I have to do.
We've been talking about increasing employee engagement, and overall, you have a software and the platform. Is there anything that you feel like we might have left out that our listeners would need to understand to increase engagement in their own company?
I think the main thing is, I believe trust is very important. Don't be afraid to have a candid discussion with the employee, even as a management or as a manager, depending on if you're a line manager or if you are the leadership. I think people understand and they can process bad news. People can process a frank discussion. It's better to have an honest, eye-to-eye, frank discussion rather than skirting the issue and going around the bush because you're afraid to have that hard discussion. I think the more you do that, the better your relationship will be, and the better trust will be built within the organization and within your teams, and the better engagement you'll see in your organization.
Well, thank you so much, Sri, for being here, sharing your wisdom.
Thank you, Gene. It's been a pleasure.
Fantastic interview. I love talking about engagement, specifically increasing employee engagement. When you think about your own company, I'm not saying that you have terrible engagement whatsoever, but how do you make it better? How do you really improve it? Well, that's what we talked about inside this. And if you feel like I can help you with anything, make sure you reach out to me at genehammett.com and schedule a call today. Love to talk to you about what's going on in your business. Absolutely free, the right kind of company that's in high growth mode, or at least wants to be in growth mode. And it'd be great to connect with you and get to know you. When you think of growth and you think of leadership, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.